ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. Here we are studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga and the chapter on realization, which is based upon Kathopanishad. And we have seen from the beginning, by the name realization, Swamiji is indicating that this Upanishadic knowledge has to be realized. And how it is to be realized, that will be dealt with in this lecture from Kathopanishad. And we have seen from the beginning, let us remember, that the world which we see is what we see with our five senses, so it is not the full world. And we think about it by our mind, which is a human mind, again filled with limitations, so we will not get the reality like this. It must include physical, mental, moral, spiritual world, and if we do not get the comprehensive data, our knowledge will be wrong, partial means wrong, and so we cannot have a comprehensive view. But if we go to the center, from there we can judge everything, and the center is not anywhere outside, it is in our own soul. And so this is how we have to go, and if we go towards our own soul, we transcend our mind also, and will become free from both those defects. And then Swamiji explained this very nicely, and then we saw that he read, this was his introductory remark, then he read some portion from the Kathopanishad which tells the story of Yama and Nachiketa, and then when he asked the third boon, Yama first did not want to disclose because he wanted to test whether he is fit for that. From there we get some knowledge that this enjoyment is outgoing tendency, and we lose our capacity for this ingoing which is necessary for realizing Brahman. So, religion should be based upon direct perception. Then on that data we can think. Faith does not mean believe in everything. Faith means what the rishis are telling. If they are telling us the process and the result, then hypothetically we can accept and undergo that process to get at that result. That much faith is all right. Otherwise, the faith becomes a blind faith and it leads to fanaticism that we have seen. So, what is the meaning that so many Christians are there, so many Mohammedans are there, so many Vedantins are there? That they are trying to follow that path by which they will come to the experience. On the other side, if we have direct experience, reason cannot contradict it. Somebody comes and tries to convince you, you have seen the place, and they say you have not seen, then so it is both ways. That means logic cannot give you the truth, logic cannot deny the truth which you have seen. So perception is completely different, and this is the watchword of the Vedanta, realize. Then he talks that what happens to the heaven. Because in the second boon he had asked for heaven, and in many religions heaven is only the last point. So there he says that is all due to our imagination. Depending upon our present position, we imagine our heaven. and that is an impossibility that we will be there eternally. Up to this we read. And then first, very clearly Swamiji says, transcendent immanent reality, first we have to negate the world which we see, because we have found it is unreal or wrong reading due to our mind and organs. When we deny it, we will get at the truth, and then we shall see that that truth itself is filling this universe. In this way, Swamiji talked of transcendent immanent reality, and there he is reading from Kathopanishad, and so from the first chapter, Kathopanishad has 2 chapters and 3 sections in each chapter. So the story and all that has taken this place, and from the first chapter, from the second section, he is now quoting one verse. We read that last time, that which the Vedas declare. So, sarve veda yat padamamananti tapansi sarvani ched vadanti yadi chanto brahmacharyam charanti tatte padam sangrahena bravimi om ittat. Let me tell you the placing of this shloka in the Kathopanishad itself. As soon as Yama starts talking about Atman, Nachiketa puts his question again newly in a new language. And that we have read. That which is beyond past and present, that which is beyond good and bad, that which is beyond what we do and what we do not do. But you see that Nachiketa here is feeling that the reality is transcendent. I am in this world. How can I realize the reality? But side by side, Nachiketa also feels that Yama has realized. That is why he is talking like that. So that which is absolutely beyond, and yet you have seen, that please you tell me. That was Nachiketa's position. And Yama understood that this boy wants a ladder. He feels that somewhere above is God. Above means beyond. And he is here. How he will go? So he requires a ladder. And that ladder is Omkar or Pranava. Now Omkar is the name of Brahman. But by chanting Brahma, Brahma, we do not go anywhere. Om is such a thing that from our present position, we can chant Om. And slowly, we can go to the mental chanting of Om. And that will make us transcend the whole world and take us to reality. That is the position of Om. And so, Yama says that for which the whole life is struggle is there, that I am telling that is Om. That is the last shloka which we read. Now, it is all right. Nachiketa will take hold of that Om. But what is the nature of the reality to be realized? That is our today's topic. Today's topic is, what is the nature of the reality? Depending upon that, we shall turn our sadhana. So, there we read now. Now Yama answers the question. What becomes of a man when the body dies? So, now Yama answers the question means, now Yama is telling the nature of that reality which is represented by Om. What is the nature of that reality? This wise one never dies, is never born. It arises from nothing and nothing arises from it. Unborn, eternal, everlasting, this ancient one can never be destroyed with the destruction of the body. That is the whole point. At the point of death, what happens? If the slayer thinks he can slay, or if the slain thinks he is slain, they both do not know the truth. For the self neither slays nor is slain. So this is, I will read the mantra 18 from the second section of the first chapter. न जायते म्रियते वा विपश्चित नायम कुतश्चित न बभूव कश्चित अजो नित्या शाश्वतो यम पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. This is what Swamiji translated. Now the main important word here is the name of that reality is called Vipaschit. Now Vipaschit means intelligent person, but Swamiji has caught the point real, and Swamiji has translated it as wise one. This wise one never dies. Now Swamiji is commenting upon that word. You understood? Knowledge is theoretical knowledge. Knowledge can be, many things can be under knowledge, but there is something called wisdom. And that is a Swamiji's excellent translation, I would say. So, wisdom, how can you translate it? Sometimes the other languages may express something more beautifully. So, a man has, now English, wisdom is best word. In Sanskrit, Vipaschit. Medhavi, well, Acharya has translated as Medhavi. So, if you want in some Indian languages, in Marathi it will be Shahana. In Hindi, Sayana. That is the wise one. Who knows what things are, who behaves like that, that is the wise one. So Swamiji is now commenting upon this. A most tremendous position I should like to draw your attention to. The adjective in the first line, which is wise. As we proceed, we shall find that the ideal of the Vedanta is that all wisdom and all purity are in the soul already. Dimly expressed or better expressed. That is all the difference. Now Swamiji has come to man. Every man, the real nature is this wise one. But due to mental purity or impurity, it is expressed less or more. And so, the difference between an ignorant person and a wise person is of degree. That is what Swamiji's special point is. You cannot categorize as one man as bad and one man as good. One man as ignorant and other as knower. There are gradations. He is little wiser. He is still wiser. So that Swamiji is now presenting with a hope to humanity that everybody can achieve it because that is our real nature. As we proceed, we shall find that the ideal of Vedanta is that all wisdom and all purity are in the soul already, dimly expressed or better expressed. That is all the difference. The difference between man and all things in the whole universe is not of kind, but only in degree. So kind means this is different, that is different. No. This is expressing the jnana dimly, that is expressing more. All things. What we call jada, the expression is almost nil. What we call animals, the expression is just a very little. What we call the ignorant man, the expression is better. What we call the wiser man, the expression is still better. And we have to gain the full expression in our life. That is the whole story of sadhana. The difference between man and man, this is Swamiji's tremendous statement. And all things in the whole creation is not in kind but only in degree. The background, the reality of everyone is that same eternal, ever blessed, ever pure and ever perfect one. So that is our real nature. What is our real nature? That we have no idea at present. And then we may get an idea. But when that real nature is realized, that becomes real in our factual life. That is called realization. And that is the very name of this chapter. So first we must know that what is our real nature. then only we can go in the right direction. It is the Atman, the soul, in the saint and the sinner, in the happy and the miserable, in the beautiful and the ugly, in men and in animals. It is the same throughout. It is the shining one. The difference is caused by the power of expression. In some it is expressed more, in others less, but this difference of expression has no effect upon the Atman. That is more important thing. We should not think, I am become impure. Mind may be impure, not the Atman. Our real nature is absolutely pure by its very nature. That is what Swamiji is pointing out. If in their dress one man shows more of his body than another, it does not make any difference in their bodies. The difference is in their dress. We had better remember here that throughout the Vedanta philosophy, there is no such thing as good and bad. Very important point. We die in society with what we think as good and what we think as bad. They are very relative terms. They change as per the condition of our mind. They change as per the situation in society. So we have only to think what is expressing the reality more. That should be our consideration, not good and bad. They are not two different things. The same thing is good or bad, and the difference is only in degree. The very thing I call pleasurable today, we call good that which is pleasurable. Tomorrow, under better circumstances, I may call pain. No, people are working in the field and it is very hot. When they get some blast of wind, they feel very happy. But a rich man will feel that blast of the wind as hot, low, and he will run to his AC. So, whether that wind was good or bad, for that man it was good. For you it is not good. So that is how, according to the state of the mind, it goes on changing. The fire that warms us can also consume us. It is not the fault of the fire. Thus the soul being pure and perfect, the man who does evil is giving the lie unto himself. That means he is not knowing that he is the soul. So he is doing evil. Even in the murderer, the pure soul is there. It dies not. It was his mistake. He could not manifest it. He had covered it up. Now, nor in the man who thinks that he is killed is this. He has taken from the original expression that hanta chen manyate hantum, hatas chen manyate hatam, ubhauto na vijanito nayam hantina hanyate. Swamiji has generalized upon this hanti and hanyate that any evil action is not done by the soul. It is done by the body and the mind of the man, by the ego of the man. It dies not. It was his mistake who could not manifest it. He had covered it up. Nor in the man who thinks that he is killed is the soul killed. It is eternal. It can never be killed, never destroyed. Infinitely smaller than the smallest, infinitely larger than the largest, because everything is He. Somebody asked in which Upanishad Nirguna and Saguna equal emphasis is done. I replied that in every Upanishad it is done, because that is the very nature of the reality. Upanishads are not going to create the nature of the reality. The rishis have seen that nature and they are describing. It's a question of emphasis. Some people put on this or on that. But you see here, infinitely smaller than the smallest, infinitely larger than the largest. This Lord of all is present in the depths of every human heart. Lord of all, Because nothing in extra cosmic God cannot rule this world. The transcendent immanent reality, which is present in every particle of the universe and yet beyond, he only can rule the world. So he is called the Ishvara or the Lord. This Lord of all is present in the depths of every human heart. Heart is the instrument for experiencing God. And we have to go deep into it, then we will find Him there. The sinless, bereft of all misery, see Him through the mercy of the Lord. This is अणोरणीयान महतो महीयान आत्मास्य जंतो नीतो गुहायाम तमक्रतु पश्यति वीत शोको धातु प्रसादात महिमानमात्मना. धातु प्रसादात means by the grace of the Lord. The sinless, bereft of all misery, see Him through the mercy of the Lord. The bodiless, yet dwelling in the body. The spaceless, yet seeming to occupy space. Infinite, omnipresent, knowing such to be the soul, the sages never are miserable. Vita shoko bhavati. He goes beyond misery. When he knows that everything is only the manifestation of Atman, less covered or more covered does not make any difference, and so he never gets misery. Misery comes due to separation from something dear or meeting something which is not dear. But when the soul is seen everywhere, there is neither dear nor non-dear. And we already read that. Oh, next. This Atman is not to be realized by the power of speech, nor by vast intellect, nor by the study of the Vedas. 23rd mantra. Nayam atma pravachanena labhyo na medaya na bahuna shrutena yame vaisha vrunute tena labhya tasyaisha atma vivrunute tanung swam. Not to be realized by the power of speech, nor by vast intellect, nor by the study of the Vedas. Na bahuna shrutena. This is a very bold utterance. Now, Swamiji, before completing the mantra, I stopped here and is telling, this is a very bold utterance. As I told you before, the sages were very bold thinkers and never stopped at anything. You will remember that in India, these Vedas are regarded in a much higher light than even the Christians regard their Bible. Your idea of revelation is that a man was inspired by God, but in India, the idea is that things exist because they are in the Vedas. That much superiority we put to the Vedas. In and through the Vedas, the whole creation has come. All that is called knowledge is in the Vedas. Every word is sacred and eternal. Eternal as the soul, without beginning and without end. The whole of the Creator's mind is in the book, as it were. That is the light in which the Vedas are held. Why is this thing moral? Because the Vedas say so. Why is the thing immoral? Because the Vedas say so. In spite of all that, look at the boldness of these sages who proclaimed that the truth is not to be found by much study of the Vedas. A realization, that is the main point. With whom the Lord is pleased, to that man he expresses himself. Yamai vaisha vrunute tene labhyam tasyaisha atma vivrunute tanung swam. Now here, there is a interpretation by Ramanuja and interpretation by Shankar. And Swamiji has followed here the interpretation by Ramanuja. Yam eva esha vrunute tena labhya. Shankar says, Yam means God. Esha means sadhak. Grunati means chooses. Tena labhya. If the sadhak chooses God, he gets it. Chooses means I want God and nothing else. Ramanuja says, Yam is sadhak, Esha is God. So the God decides, I will reveal to so and so, and then he reveals. Because of this definition, it appears, Swamiji is telling, as if God is partial. He likes somebody and then reveals himself. With whom the Lord is pleased in that, to that man he expresses himself. But then the objection may be advanced that this is something like partisanship. But Yama explains, so in the next shloka, the criteria are given. On whom is God pleased? It is all right to say that the person on whom God is pleased, he gives him knowledge. But if your mind is like that, God is pleased. God is not pleased because you are giving him money. God does not require anything. So, God is pleased is all right, but on whom it is pleased, so that removes that condition of partiality. Na virato duscharita, na shanto, na samahita, na shanta manaso vapi, prajnane naimam apnuyat. Swamiji's translation, those who are evildoers, whose minds are not peaceful, can never see the light. It is to those who are true in heart, pure in deed, whose senses are controlled, that this self manifests itself. So that removes any idea of partiality, and that means if we bring our mind to this condition, the Lord will be automatically pleased and we will get his vision. Swamiji passes on through the third section of the first chapter. And there, an allegory is given by Yama to Nachiketa, and that is of a chariot. Atmanam Rathinam Vidhi is the third mantra in the third section of the first chapter. Let me read Swamiji's translation. Here is a beautiful figure. Figure means Rupak Alankar, allegory, that is called figure. Picture the self to be the ruler and this body the chariot. The self here with capital S may not be happy, it should be small self, because this, what I feel as my soul, has to reach the real soul. For that the chariot is imagined. Future the self to be the rider and this body the chariot, the intellect to be the charioteer, mind the reins, and the senses the horses. He whose horses are well broken means trained properly, and whose reins are strong and kept well in the hands of the charioteer, the intellect reaches the goal, which is the state of him, the omnipresent. So it means the real nature is omnipresent, but if we control our indriyas by our mind tightly, and our judgment is proper, where to go and how to go, then we reach the reality. That is the figure. On the other hand, the Upanishad or all gurus teach like this. If this is this you are going, if this is this you are going to the opposite direction, mind you. But the man whose horses, the senses are not controlled, nor the reins, the mind well managed, goes to destruction. This Atman in all beings does not manifest himself to the eyes or the senses, but those whose minds have become purified and refined realize him. So it is not an object to be seen by the senses. It is not an object to be imagined by the mind. It is the reality of the senses, reality of the mind, reality of the perceiver, and reality of the perceived also. So, that is why this Atman in all beings does not manifest himself to the eyes or the senses. But those whose minds have become purified and refined realize him. Those whose minds have become purified, that means they have no sense of enjoyment there. And fine means they have become sukshma. To perceive the subtle things they are ready. In that case, the sadhaka will perceive the reality. Beyond all sound, all sight, beyond form, absolute, beyond all taste and touch, infinite, without beginning and without end, even beyond nature, the unchangeable, he who realizes him, frees himself from the jaws of death. एष सर्वेषु भूतेषु गूढ़ो आत्मा न प्रकाशते दृश्यते त्वग्रया बुद्ध्या सूक्ष्मया सूक्ष्मदर्शिभिः 12. But it is very difficult. It is as if we are walking on the edge of razor. The way is long and perilous. But struggle on. Do not despair. Awake, arise, and stop not till the goal is reached. That has become like a slogan among the young people who believe in Swami Vivekananda. That is from here, from the Jnana Yoga. And here the goal is very clear, realization of Atman, not any so-called theoretical goal which we have ourselves made. So, उत्तिष्ठत जाग्रत प्राप्य वरान् निबोधत क्षुरस्य धारा निशेता दुरत्यया दुर्गम पथस्तत् कवयो वदन्ति. This is what is Swamiji's translation. The one central idea throughout all the Upanishads is that of realization. Swamiji generalizes. Though he is talking of Kathopanishad, he says the central idea throughout all the Upanishads is that of realization. A great many questions will arise from time to time, and especially to the modern man, because he has gone away from this ideal. He has become extrovert more and more and more, so questions arise. There will be the question of utility. Swamiji has taken up this utility in the first lecture, Necessity of Religion. How it is useful? If useful means pound, shilling, pence, dollar, cent, then it is not useful. If useful means removal of our misery, then it is very useful. So the first question will be this. There will be various other questions, but in all we shall find that we are prompted by our past association. That means that is the sanskara. So we are asking this question. Actually they do not stand the test of reason. It is association of ideas that has such a tremendous power over our minds that has become fixed in our mind, nothing more. To those who from childhood have always heard of a personal God and the personality of the mind, that means reality. These ideas will of course appear very stern and harsh. But if they listen to them and think over them, they will become part of their lives and will no longer frighten them. Understood? Vedanta has to be heard again and again, thought about again and again, then those sanskaras will be natural to us. Otherwise, the old sanskara, the extrovert sanskaras, we only believe in a God outside, that will not going to help us. The great question that generally arises is the utility of philosophy. So after describing in general, he has come back to the question of utility. Utility of philosophy. That means the search for truth. To that there can be only one answer. If on the utilitarian ground it is good for men to seek for pleasure, why should not those whose pleasure is in religious speculation seek for that? So if utility means happiness, ultimately, we find the highest happiness only in the realization. So why deny that? So happiness is subjective quantity, but we know the reality and we know that we experience the reality that will be the goal of life. So we are happy only in that. Because sense enjoyments please many, they seek for them. But there may be others whom they do not please, who want higher enjoyment. The dog's pleasure is so. Swamiji is giving the extreme lower example. Then we understand this point. So, the dog cannot understand the pleasure of the scientist who gives up everything and perhaps dwells on the top of a mountain to observe the position of certain stars. The dogs may smile at him and think he is a madman. Perhaps this poor scientist never had money enough to marry even and lives very simply. Maybe the dog laughs at him, but the scientist says, "My dear dog, your pleasure is only in the senses which you enjoy and you know nothing beyond. But for me, this is the most enjoyable life, and if you have the right to seek your pleasure in your own way, so I have in mine." So he has given the example between the scientist and the dog, now higher. The mistake is that we want to tie the whole world down to our own plane of thought and to make our mind the measure of the whole universe. To you, the old sense things are perhaps the greatest pleasure, but it is not necessary that my pleasure should be the same. And when you insist upon that, I differ from you. That is the difference between the worldly utilitarian and the religious man. So, Swamiji has clearly defined religious man means sadhak here, and worldly utilitarian is the so-called practical man of the world. The first man says, "See how happy I am, I got money, but do not bother my head about religion. It is too unsearchable and I am happy without it." So far so good, good for all utilitarians, but this world is terrible. Swamiji is coming down on utilitarians, you will not find happiness. In ignorance you can never find ultimate happiness. If a man gets happiness in any way, excepting by injuring his fellow beings, God speed him. But when this man comes to me and says, "You too must do these things, you will be a fool if you do not," I say, "You are wrong, because the very things which are pleasurable to you have not the slightest attraction for me." This is the basic minimum condition of the sadhaka, realization. If I had to go after a few handfuls of gold, my life would not be worth living. I should die. That is the answer the religious man would make. So, those who are struggling and they are assailed with doubts by the practical people of the world, Swamiji is filling our mind with that idea that the reply is this: "I don't care." The fact is that religion is possible only for those who have finished with these lower things. We must have our own experiences, must have our full run. It is only when we have finished this run that the other world opens. When we have come to know that there is nothing in this world, then only we can go beyond. Very clear. The enjoyments of the senses sometimes assume another phase which is dangerous and tempting. You will always hear the idea in very old times, in every religion, that a time will come when all the miseries of life will cease and only joys and pleasures will remain, and this earth will become a heaven. So, a wrong temptation is given to the man who wants to follow religion, that you will get happiness here itself, if you do like this or if you do like that. That I do not believe. This earth will always remain the same world. It is a most terrible thing to say, yet I do not see my way out of it. Terrible for people to hear it. So Swamiji says, terrible thing to say, but I don't find any other solution. The misery in the world is like chronic rheumatism in the body. Drive it from one part and it goes to another. Drive it from there and you will feel it somewhere else. Whatever you do, it is still there. In olden times, people lived in forest and ate each other. In modern times, they do not eat each other's flesh, but they cheat one another. Whole countries and cities are ruined by cheating. That does not show much progress. I do not see that what you call progress in the world is other than the multiplication of desire. Wonderful analysis. Multiplication of desires, we call it progress. If one thing is obvious to me, it is this, that desires bring all misery. It is the state of the beggar who is always begging for something and unable to see anything without the wish to possess it, is always longing for more. If the power to satisfy our desires is increased in arithmetical progression, Swamiji's particular expression, the power of desire is increased in geometrical progression. So if you fulfill a desire, the desire increases, and increases more than you can fulfill. The sum total of happiness and misery in this world is at least the same throughout. If a wave rises in the ocean, it makes a hollow somewhere. If happiness comes to one man, unhappiness comes to another, or perhaps to some animal. Men are increasing in numbers and some animals are decreasing. We are killing them off and taking their land. We are taking all means of sustenance from them. How can we say then that happiness is increasing? So have a broader view and we will find the strong race eats up the weaker. But do you think that the strong race will be very happy? No. They will begin to kill each other. I do not see on practical grounds how this world can become a heaven. Facts are against it. On theoretical grounds also, I see it cannot be. Why? Perfection is always infinite. In anything finite, we cannot have perfection, and so the only goal of life can be infinite, and in the infinite, we do not deny others. That is the fun. We are this infinite already, and we are trying to manifest that infinity. That is the life's picture. You and I and all beings are trying to manifest it. So far it is all right. But from this fact, some German philosophers have started a peculiar theory that this manifestation will become higher and higher until we attain perfect manifestation, until we have become perfect beings. This is what, in one of the previous lectures, also Swamiji has referred to a very wrong concept. What is meant by perfect manifestation? Perfection means infinity and manifestation means limit. Through our body and mind we are going to manifest. And so it means that we shall become unlimited, limited, which is self-contradictory. Such a theory may please children. Children means unthinking people. But it is poisoning their minds with lies and is very bad for religion. But we know that this world is a degradation, that man is a degradation of God, and that Adam fell. So, Swamiji takes up the mythological story of the Western people that Adam fell. So, our position is a degradation. There is no religion today that does not teach that man is a degradation. We have been degraded down to the animal, and we are now going up to emerge out of this bondage. But we shall never be able entirely to manifest the infinity here. In a previous lecture, Swamiji has made this already clear. We shall struggle hard, but there will come a time when we shall find that it is impossible to be perfect here while we are bound by the senses. Here means while we are bound by the senses, we cannot find perfection here. And then the march back to our original state of infinity will be sounded. That is renunciation. So Vairagya is at the moor of all our spiritual progress. Whether you are a bhakta or a karmi or a jnani or yogi, it does not matter. Vairagya is at the root of our spiritual progress. This is renunciation. We shall have to get out of the difficulty by reversing the process by which we got in, and then morality and charity will begin. Swamiji has already shown everywhere. The less of this smaller I, the more moral we are. The less of the smaller I, the better charitable we are. What is the watchword of all ethical codes? Not I but thou. And this I is the outcome of the infinite behind, trying to manifest itself on the outside world. This is Swamiji's definition or real truth about I consciousness. I consciousness, reality is infinite, but trying to express through our sense and mind, it becomes this I. This little I is the result, and it will have to go back and join the infinite, its own nature. And it's his own nature. Every time you say, not I, my brother, but thou, you are trying to go back. And every time you say I and not thou, you take the false step of trying to manifest the infinite through the sense world. That brings struggles and evils into the world. But after a time, renunciation must come. Eternal renunciation, till you reach the goal. The little I is dead and gone. Why care so much for this little life? All these vain desires of living and enjoying this life here or in some other place brings death. Okay. If you are developed from animals, the animals also may be degraded men. So, evolution, involution works together. How do you know it is not so? You have seen that the proof of evolution is simply this. You find a series of bodies from the lowest to the highest rising in a gradually ascending scale. But from that, how can you insist that it is always from the lower upwards and never from the higher downwards? You have made a series. How do you say from here to there? It can be from there to here. The argument applies both ways. And if anything is true, I believe it is that the series is repeating itself in going up and down. That is more rational. Involution, evolution. Involution, evolution. So we have become small, we have to become infinite. How do you have evolution without involution? Our struggle for the higher life shows that we have been degraded from a high state. Because that is the main point. When the struggle for higher life comes, we understand these things, not otherwise. It must be so. Only it may vary as to details. Always cling to the idea set forth with one voice by Christ, Buddha and the Vedanta universalization hour, that we must all come to perfection in time. Perfection or Purnatva is the solution Swamiji is telling, which is nothing but infinite. But only by giving up this imperfection, yes. Because in reality we are God, so by giving up this outside man nature we will become God. This world is nothing. It is at best only a hideous caricature, a shadow of the reality. That is how to look at the world. It is a shadow of the reality. We must go to the reality. Renunciation will take us to it. Renunciation is the very basis of our true life. Every moment of goodness and real life that we enjoy is when we do not think of ourselves. This little separate self must die. Then we shall find that we are in the real and that reality is God. And He is our own true nature. This Swamiji is reply to the so-called utilitarians. And is our own true nature and is always in us and with us. Let us live in Him and stand in Him. It is the only joyful state of existence. Utility shows by maximum or real joy is only being one with God. Life on the plane of the spirit is the only life, and let us all try to attain to this realization. So Swamiji ends this lecture with an inspiration. Let us all struggle for realization of our own real nature, which Swamiji has described through Kathopanishad so well in this lecture. So we have come to the end of this lecture, not to the end of Kathopanishad. In the next lecture, Swamiji will take up the second. We have finished the first chapter of the book. And second chapter, Swamiji will take up in the next lecture. So let us wait for that. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Vire Shantam Namamyaham. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hare Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.